George, thanks so much and spending time with me. Maybe I thought I'd just maybe go through what your characters are going through this season. Maybe start with you and maybe talk to us about Peter and how coming off season 4, becoming Peter, and then going through some of the things that he's going through in part 1.
Peter, everything was very safe and very clear. You know, from the first season, there was power in my hands. I knew what I was doing. I knew my job, and I knew how to get by, and every once in a while, I knew how to play a trick. And then going in from that into becoming somebody that follows a group, there was a bit of a kind of an inconvenient thing about it, about being part of a group rather than the leader of my own life and my own circumstance. And so from that, but that took a second to feel comfortable. But at some point, that was comfortable, and then I started opening my eyes and seeing other people and realizing I can actually help them, and it's not just about me. And then I get a responsibility. I'm told that I'm going to be the one leading this group, and so that feels comfortable. That feels familiar. I'm no longer the leader of my own life, but at least I can be a leader of something. And then everything crashes in this season. So all the perception I had about what's going to happen and how my life is going to evolve, everything crashes this season, and I'm in the unknown, and that's where I am. Yeah. I'm in the unknown completely.
Yeah. And John's gone through so much too with losing his friend John the Baptist, and now he's a preaching critic of Peter now too. But talk about your thoughts on this season as well.
With me, I think it's a really messy devolution a little bit from where Andrew thinks that he is and thinks he's ready for this Holy Week, and it becomes very apparent very quickly that things are off the rails. And I think that Andrew struggles when it seems like things are out of control, and Andrew likes to believe in Jesus' message until it gets really uncomfortable and unpleasant, some of the things that he's saying, and then sort of falls into a sense of denial almost, in that it can't be real, it must be parable, it must be metaphor. And so then we see the ramifications of that and the sort of slow dawning of truth.
I know, and you're always battling with Matthew about writing down some things too, but talk about what your thoughts are on your character this season.
Well, leading in from season 4, we kind of get the last of many rebukes that Jesus imparts upon the sons of thunder. Sorry, I've lost my voice. But I think this is the one that really hits John the hardest. It's actually when he's arguably been the most selfish. And that's something he has to unlearn. And it hits him so hard that when he notices it in another disciple, Judas, which is a little bit of foreshadowing as well, considering where they sit at the table, there's a moment where Judas is expecting to get some solace in season 4 from John. And John's like, no, you're thinking of you. Try and think of something other than you. And Judas doesn't like hearing that. And that final rebuke, seeing that John has learnt that, leads him into season 5, where I always say, as Mary ends season 4, beginning to understand, she's caught the bug of understanding. Beginning of season 5, John catches the bug, and he starts to go like, hold on. It's almost like you can see the Matrix, when you can see through the parable of what Jesus is saying, and John's like, oh, I know what he's saying. And that's his journey, wrestling with that, and then trying to clue in the other disciples on that. And we see that process is met with a lot of argument.
I was talking to Dallas too, and as a viewer, and seeing all you act, and how it felt like you guys were born to play these roles. Do you feel that way after having through 5 seasons now?
Can I just say very quickly that John was exiled to Greece, and I'm Greek background, so something that was very special to me that I don't think they could have got with, they could have got another Greek actor, but they didn't know that was my background. And so one thing that I've done, as I've read John's book, I'd never read it before the show. I've read it in ancient Greek, because I can still tell the letters, and it's fascinating to see what a poet he kind of was, how philosophical he was. He went very deep, and choosing that language which was a common tongue at the time, allowed him to be so much more emotive. So to a degree, I felt like, I don't know about born to play the role, but definitely there was a lot of synergy between me and John, especially given his existence in Greece in particular.
It does feel like we are unusually well suited, that we have been put into these roles for a reason, and that because we are well suited to the roles, I in my opinion, all of us, whenever I'm sitting around the Last Supper table, it really does feel like you are with those disciples, and they feel very unique. They have their own point of view, and I think because everyone is so well put in their roles, it allows play to happen. It allows a sort of fluidity of creativity, which is so lovely. It's not like we're going like, well, what does this? It feels like at this point we get the characters and we are protectors of our characters. We want them to thrive and their point of views to be told and heard, even when they are all clashing, and I think that makes it really alive.
Yeah, I think Dallas makes very interesting and specific choices, about the people that he put in each role, and often different than what you would think, and very, very, very specific. And I think, honestly, it's just a testament to Dallas's talent, to be honest, is not to, which is, a big part of everything, is just to kind of, once you've chosen the right person for the job, a lot of the job is done. And like, Judas, what an interesting choice. Pilate, what an interesting choice. That, at first you can say, wow, that is, your first reaction is, that's different than what I thought. But then after a while you realize, like, oh, how could it be any other way? You know what I mean? Like, that's the person. And so I think throughout this production, I think it's a testament to Dallas's creativity and how he kind of, the way he visions this project to create unique characters that each person has. Nobody's like in somebody else. Each person has their own personality, which not necessarily you might not be able to get from the source material, but he was able to create. So that's really, it really is Dallas's kind of genius.